And just turn the palms skyward, ceilingward if they're not already. And then squeeze the elbows in towards the rib cage. So palms are up, elbows are in. And then think about engaging that upper abdominal band so that you can feel a little thoracic spine lift. The lumbar may want to go into extension, belly forward. Really think about keeping that upper abdominal band engaged enough so that the change in spinal alignment is just vertical. And then hold all of that kind of upper band activity, elbows in, and we're going to turn our gaze over towards the right. And then inhale and take the chin up towards the ceiling and round your way back and land back at neutral head alignment. Make sure that everything is locked in, elbows are in, and we're going to turn towards the left. Chin lifts, and we roll all the way back to neutral. Check in, rebalance to the right. This time the chin's going to tuck down, and we're going to find our way back to neutral. Check that posture, and we'll turn to the left. Chin comes down, and we roll back to neutral. Relax the elbows and shoulders. And note as that elbow positioning changes, how the middle of the body responds to that. Pay attention to that thoracic joint, whether we're starting to cave forward or whether we've maintained that verticality. And just take a couple of full breaths right into the center of the lungs, like you're trying to expand from the center of the lungs out towards the edges of your body. Try to fully inflate the lung cavity before flipping to that release side. Maybe one more full round of breath here. Eventually, we'll come to that relaxed seat. We're gonna have a blanket, a bolster, a pillow, and a ball handy. Let's start out with our legs extended in front of us and a bolster or pillow handy. So just in a place where we can access it. When you get into your staff position here, remember the knees can bend. See if you can recreate that same freedom in the lung space that we had when we released the elbows. And then utilize an exhale to take yourself into a seated forward fold. Not a long hold here, just kind of a check-in to see how the body is feeling. And then let's walk our way back up into staff. See if it's possible to take the hands behind you and create that diamond thumbs and index fingers together behind you. So the back of the hands are pressed up against the sacrum, the palms are away from you. And then really think about positioning the elbows in the place where you feel the most freedom of breath. So that may mean that the elbows are pulling back and we're kind of pulling across this anterior sheath of musculature. It may mean that there's a little bit more softness if the anterior sheath is super tight, but position the elbows where you feel the most freedom of breath. And then let's take ourselves forward into another fold. When you get into the end range of motion, which is likely a little bit more limited, once again, think about the elbow positioning and how that's impacting your ability to breathe and fully respirate. And let's bring ourselves back up into staff, and we're going to engage our pillow or bolster. That's just going to come across the thighs. Using this here to create some softness in our fold. and trying to get some flexion into the thoracic spine. So set your prop and then just release out over it. And then think about where the elbows can be positioned to allow that freedom of breath. So that may be resting on your prop. It may be extended out in front of you. It may be underneath the prop. Instead of thinking about what tweaks in my physical body can I make to further the depth of the shape, really think about where I can position my arms so that I can further deepen my breath. So there's this old west town, not too dissimilar to Tombstone. And the people of this town are going about their daily experience, not too dissimilarly to how you and I go about our daily experience. The only thing that's slightly askew is this tiny little curl of black smoke rising towards the sky. Not super apparent where it's coming from. Sometimes it's not even super apparent that it's truly there. People keep kind of catching it, looking, and the wind, distorts the little billow of smoke. So sometimes it seems like maybe it's just dust. Other times it looks quite clearly like someone has a small fire going. At least for a little while. Because after some time has passed, it's undeniable there's a fire somewhere in town. For some purpose. We'll give ourselves about 90 more seconds here. Keep thinking about that capacity and depth of your breath. Now, the capacity and depth of breath may lead to expansion of the shape, but allow that to be a secondary experience. Think about where you can position yourself to breathe more freely. Last 25 seconds here. And it feels appropriate. Let's bring our spine back up towards vertical. We'll place our top to the side for the moment. Bend both knees. And as the thighs come in towards the torso, let the hands grasp either on the shins or up towards the knee joint, and just pull your torso towards your thighs. You can even go arms underneath the hamstrings if that feels accessible for you. And tuck the chin. And then draw your breath up towards the top of the shoulders, like you're trying to push the scapula out. Like we're drawing the breath up and then expanding that upper back. And let's bring our spine back up towards vertical. Extend the legs back out the mat. So we end up back towards staff. And take your right hand over to the outer edge of your left thigh. Left hand's going to come behind you. And we're just going to, again, keep the verticality of the spine. Think about the ease of your breath and turn towards the left shoulder. A couple ways that we can kind of distort our body's ability to breathe here. Probably the primary one is over-rotating and creating the musculature to kind of tense up. Probably that next easiest way to disrupt the breath is to just lose track of that full inhale and exhale capacity. So make sure you're not over-rotating and spasming the musculature, and then make sure that you're remembering full capacity to breathe. Give ourselves just another 15 seconds here. When it feels appropriate, we'll come back to neutral and just follow that out to a forward fold. And then we'll walk our way back up into seat, staff. And from staff, left hand to the outer edge of the right thigh, right hand behind us, spine stays vertical. And we'll rotate our way into our full capacity to breathe. Last 10 seconds here. When it feels appropriate, come back to neutral. And one more time, let's find a little seat to forward fold. was the thickness and undeniability of the smoke continues to grow. We'll start to poke around, trying to find what might be the cause of this pollutant. Turns out that this man, kind of known as the town troublemaker, and he's kind of known as a scammer, was in this little back alleyway, and he was trying to melt some silver and some lead so that he could dilute a little silver. For a scam, of course. And his little setup had tipped over and caught some rubbish on fire. Fire again eventually got a little bigger than he could handle, and he had run off. Last 15 seconds here. Walk ourselves back up to see. Let's take our bolster or pillow prop. Remember that if you're using a pillow and you want a little more density, you have that blanket or towel that you can use to lay on top. We're going to place that directly behind the spine and then bend both knees. And let the knees fall over to the left. And then as the knees fall over to the left, think about squaring up your torso with your prop. So left hand comes over to what used to be the right side of your mat. And then sternum comes down essentially right on top of our prop. We're looking for that same freedom of breath right in the center of the chest. So if you don't feel like you got there with your initial hip setup, remember that you could scoot your hips a little bit further under you. It takes out some of the lumbar rotation that might allow for more capacity to breathe. So think about the placement of the hips as one way that you can find this breath. The other thing that we've already worked on is where we put our hands, right? Where the elbows sit in comparison to the lung cavity. Maybe down by kind of below the shoulder space. Maybe you want those arms extended over the top, over your head, or maybe you want arms kind of down by your sides here. The typical setup, right, is just arms stacked or hands stacked, forehead resting. If that's where you get your best capacity to breathe, go with the typical setup. But really explore where your breath has the ability to most freely exchange through the inhale and exhale. And I should have mentioned, elbows could go out wide, right? The more width you bring across that shoulder girdle, that may free something up. So just really explore what gives you the best capacity to breathe here. As it happened, two men see this kind of vagrant run off after starting this fire. And they saw the fire, saw him running, put two and two together very quickly, and went and chased after him, knowing that it was his responsibility. He had the responsibility of creating this fire. He had the responsibility of creating this damage, and he was trying to run off without dealing with that. as you settle into your twist. Continue to put your emphasis on full respiration, full expansion of the lungs on each pull in of your breath. And same thing on the exit side. Full evacuation of that breath means that your next breath cycle can start with even more fresh new air. Keep kind of guiding your way back, your kind of mental focus back to your breath. So easy to just settle into a shape and let the mind wander off the mat or drift to the physicality of the body. Here we're trying to have a breath focused forward class. And so continually try to draw yourself back to the expansiveness of the breath. The expansiveness of the breath. Is there 3% more that you could pull in on your next inhale cycle? Just keep asking yourself that. And it feels appropriate for you. Bring our hands back underneath our shoulders. We'll press ourselves up and return our position towards the front of the mat. Knees stay bent here. Pull your shins, thighs close to your torso, and give yourself a little hug so that we get that rounding sensation. Big flexion of the spine. full capacity to breathe. And then we'll release, let the hands slide to the shins, and roll the chin up. Squeeze the scapula back. Think about the sternum going forward into extension. And then come back to neutral. We'll let the knees fall to the right. And we're once again lining our torso up with the middle of our prop here. So right hand comes to that left side, or what used to be the left side of the mat. Just walking ourselves down. As we walk down, we're positioning the arms and elbows wherever the chest cavity feels the most free, wherever it feels like you can breathe the easiest. So there's this couple walking home, and they see the fire, and they see some, two people running off, three people running off, really, away from the fire. The two chasing the kind of vagrant who started the fire in the first place. And the woman looks at the man and she's like, we should do something about that. And the man kind of looks back at her and he's like, we got all our bags, we're carrying them home. Plus, the fire's right on the backside of the blacksmith's shop. He has the strongest arms in the whole community. Like, he'll put out the fire. And so they continue on their way home. At this point, the blacksmith has started to notice something. And so he opens the back door to his shop and he sees that the back wall of his shop is engulfed in flames. Is you're focused on your capacity to breathe, your capacity for full expansion into your respiration. Maybe just a good time to appreciate how lucky we are to live in a society with services we have, things like fire department. But take care of situations like this if they present themselves. When they present themselves. and all of the downstream resources that are required to make those services possible. Ourselves another 45 seconds here. When it feels appropriate, hands return underneath the shoulders. We'll press ourselves up. We can take that pillow or bolster and move it out of the way. And then return to kind of a traditional staff before we bend the knees. Knees don't need to be tucked all the way here, but we do want the bottoms of the feet to be able to connect to the ground. And then hands are going to find the shins, and we're going to work through a little modified cat-cow. So as you exhale, push the sternum forward, lift the chin. Think about bending the lumbar, extending the lumbar. And then as you inhale, let the middle of the spine roll back, tuck the chin, really tuck the tailbone. And then let's become a little bit more dynamic. So as we exhale, we'll go forward, sternum forward, chin lifts into extension. And as we inhale, middle of the back rolls back, chin, shoulders roll forward into flexion. And we'll just move through this a couple more times. We're going to get full spinal articulation. Sure, we've gone through those big twist holds. Seeing if we can find more space with our full capacity to breathe. One more time in each direction. Before we make our way onto our back, let's take our blanket or towel and take that to a towel length and roll that. And let's start with that over the top of the ankles, tucked underneath, bottoms of the feet together, knees fall out wide. Little supine butterfly. And just settling back here. As you find your way onto your spine, opportunity to kind of observe, but also opportunity to redirect establish the ideal positioning for full capacity to breathe with your arms. The blacksmith, seeing this fire, shuts the door, runs in the other direction towards the well. And when he gets there, he starts shouting to the well keeper that there's a fire, and that the well keeper needs to use his water to put it out. Instantly checking back in with your respiration, the depth of that respiration. Give ourselves 30 more seconds here. When it feels appropriate, bring our knees back to neutral. Grab our blanket roll, and we can unroll that to the point where we can put our ball inside. Ball's going inside, and that's going to give us our cervical spine adjustment for the week. So that is underneath the neck, ball either at the base of the spine, base of the cervical spine, middle of the cervical spine, or top of the cervical spine, depending on where you feel like you'll get the most benefit from the adjustment. The well keeper and the blacksmith very quickly devolve into a heated argument, with the blacksmith yelling at the well keeper to put out the fire, and the well keeper yelling at the blacksmith that his responsibility is to protect the well. This argument is loud enough, is visceral enough that it starts to attract a crowd. People start gathering around as these two men start pushing one another, screaming about who needs to put out this fire. While this crowd is gathered around these two men pushing one another, while they're screaming at each other, about to come to blows, this little barefoot girl, maybe 12 or 13 years old, pushes her way through the crowd with a bucket. She dips it into the well, fills it, and starts running back into town. And she's running, water splashing out of the bucket. And she gets back to the fire with this bucket. It's maybe a third full. She splashes it on the fire and then runs back to the well, fills it again, and runs back to the fire. Same thing, splashing out the whole way. And just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This young barefoot girl just running with this bucket of water. Until the smoke changes color. Dusty, cloudy gray billow starts to roll up into the sky. Fire that was once roaring is reduced to embers. And then eventually just black, burnt, smoking wood, spooling into the night. Give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. When it feels appropriate, let's remove that blanket and ball from underneath us. Let our head come back down to the mat. Maybe rotate your head in each direction a few times. Feel the cervical spine integrating the space we've crafted. And eventually, head comes back to neutral. We may ask ourselves if there's anything that we might want, if there's anything that we might need, if there's any tweaks or adjustments that we might benefit from prior to Shavasana. If there are, we offer those to our body now. If we have everything that we need, if we're ready for some stillness, and we'll drop into a shape where we can appreciate some Shavasana. This morning, I'm just finding your version of stillness. Well, the next day, the mayor of this little town wants to hold an event to honor this young girl who put out this fire. So he calls it and gathers everyone around, invites her, and he's going to present her with a little token of her bravery, or a token for her bravery. This mayor calls this young girl up on stage, and he gives this big speech about how brave she was, what a hero she was to the community. And he hands her this reward, this little token of appreciation. He takes it and she kind of looks at it, and just, appreciate the recognition. But nothing I did was brave. I just didn't wait for someone else to do something. And that's it. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes. Into our wrists and our ankles. Up through our elbows and our knees. Up through our shoulders, hips, neck, head, jaw, tongue. Eventually, the entirety of our body will move. We'll utilize that movement to transition our way back into a seat. And the seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed. And we'll inhale our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that responsibility is most clearly defined as the response of the willing, and see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice, for taking care of yourself, and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. I will be back tomorrow night to move. If I see you then, have a beautiful rest of your day. If I see you next week, have a beautiful week. Love you. Mwah.